We are Tulane doctors. Physicians and scientists working side by side to advance academic medicine. We give our community access to the best possible medical remedies, developing state-of-the-art treatments to improve quality of life, address public health crises, and cure disease. All in passionate pursuit of our mission to provide inspired patient care for generations to come. Tulane doctors. The future of medicine is here.
The Times-Picayune always gets it right. Jay's on top.
Not quite. It says here the Crusaders are the best.
I think you mean the Greenies, buddy.
These sports writers know what's up.
At least you're wearing the right colors, but we know why people read the paper. The one thing we can all agree on, we trust the Times-Picayune.
Subscribe today. Read it today. Trust it today. The Times-Picayune.
You're never gonna make the front page wearing that.
Welcome back to the Saints Insider Podcast Postgame Show here live from the Superdome. Zach Ewing and Jim Derry. We are brought to you by Tulane Doctors. Apologize again for some audio issues, but rehashing the Saints' 26-9 loss to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers today. Just not a lot of good news out there. I saw a comment on there saying if Dennis Allen doesn't make any changes this week, that tells us everything we need. I mean, I do think we have to keep in perspective, it's October 1st, it's week 4. But should Dennis Allen make some changes, Jim?
What changes are you going to make? That's the question.
Like the play caller change would be Ronald Curry, right?
Yeah, well, he's not going to do that. I mean, that is not going to happen. I mean, I'm not saying that if the Saints keep on this road, he's going to have to do something. But to me, you either fire Pete Carmichael or you stay status quo. You can't tell your offensive coordinator is not going to call plays without firing him. And I don't know that you do that this early in the season. Look, I mean, I've been on Pete Carmichael for a year and a half now. I thought the first 2 games, I thought he did an okay job. Last game, he definitely took a step back. Today was awful. So at what point do you do it? I don't know. Ronald Curry had his chance in the preseason. He didn't fare much better. I don't know that you can make that change again without firing your offense coordinator. And I just don't think you do that in week number 5.
I will say this. The Saints historically have been a very conservative team when it comes to firing coaches. Dennis Allen historically has been very conservative when it comes to making changes. I would be shocked if somebody is fired this week. As far as other changes, yeah, I mean, you're going to have to get a little more aggressive. You're going to have to change some play calling up. Maybe you make some personnel changes. It would certainly help the secondary if Paulson Adebo came back. They lost Lonnie Johnson today. I mean, those are some changes you could make. I don't think nobody's getting fired this week.
Here's your thing, though. If you're Dennis Allen, and again, this is we're going into week 5 next week, so it's early to think about Dennis Allen potentially being fired, because if he goes 7-10 again, there, even with the loyalty factor, there's a decent chance he's going to get fired. That being said, if you're Dennis Allen, you have to know that if you have a bad year and you get fired, this is it. You're not going to get another chance in the NFL to be a head coach. You're simply not. So he has to be more willing to do those sorts of things and make decisions he wouldn't normally make or doesn't want to make, because his butt is on the line. So those are things I think are going to be thought about. And if the Saints don't get better over the next couple of weeks, I think they would rush to judgment to make those decisions rather than wait longer. I mean, when they fired Rob Ryan back in 2015, they did so in the bye week, which was like week 9 or week 10 or something. And the Saints were historically It took literally being historically bad on defense for them to fire Rob Ryan. I don't think Dennis Allen has that luxury. He's not Sean Payton. He can't wait that long. So if they continue to play like this and can't score 20 points in a football game, he's going to have to make a decision that he doesn't want to make.
Yeah, I mean, I do think as upset as everyone is, and like I said, I think it's rightfully so, you have to take a step back. They're 2-2 after 4 games. Right. This is a bad division. Tampa Bay's leading it. We don't expect Tampa Bay to be able to run off 10, 11 wins. The Saints could still win this division at 9-8. They could still right the ship. I don't know that panic is the right move, They do have 3 of their next 4 on the road again. I mean, you mentioned New England and Houston, then they're back home here for a Thursday night game against Jacksonville, and then they're, I believe, in Indianapolis the week after that, the like couple days before Halloween. So that's the month of October. If you go 1-3 in those games where you got 3 road games, and then all of a sudden you're looking at 3-5, and then you start to get into the midway point, and maybe you start to panic. I don't know that it's time to completely panic yet.
Arthur Smith is in a similar situation. When do you pull the plug on Desmond Ridder, your first-round draft pick from last year, and go to Taylor Heineke? You didn't bring in Taylor Heineke just to simply be a backup. So a lot of people in Atlanta are probably going to be calling for that change to be made. So it's not just New Orleans that changes are being called for to be made. And also remember that the Bucs actually have a much tougher schedule than anyone else in the NFC South. So they're going to hit some rough patches like they did last week against Philadelphia on Monday night. They play all the first place teams. They play a tougher schedule than the Saints do. So look, again, like you said, 2-2. It's a little early to panic, but if something doesn't change soon, if they go 2-4, and that's a long way away, but they could, then you got to start thinking about making changes.
Got to find a way to split these road games. Just got to.
100%. And it's funny because we said in the beginning of the season, before the season started, the Saints could get to 4-2. That would be, they'd be well set to go because the schedule gets easier down the road, believe it or not, than it is. You get these 4 out of the 5 out of the way. So when they started 2-0, you're thinking, well, 4-2 is almost a given. Well, now you're in a spot where, look, you would take 3-3 right now. If you go 1-1 over the course of the next 2 weeks, you'd probably take that. Again, it opens up. But, man, you got to find a way to play better because playing at New England isn't tough. If you think the Saints had trouble scoring against Tampa Bay, they're certainly going to have trouble scoring against Bill Belichick.
We are awaiting Luke Johnson, Jeff Duncan, Rod Walker from the locker room, apparently waiting on Derek Carr to speak to the media. So we will have their reaction from that when they get out here. This is the Saints Insider Postgame Show brought to you by Tulane Doctors. Zach Ewing and Jim Derry here in the Caesars Superdome, rehashing the Saints' 26-9 loss in this divisional game against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So, I don't know. We'll talk bright spots, I guess. Alvin Kamara looked like he had some burst. He had some make you miss. He caught a lot of passes. Clearly, that was a part of the game plan, and I think that part of the game plan worked. I mean, he did have a couple of third down conversions, a couple of nice moments. I think you have to be encouraged by what you saw from AK.
100%. He looked like he didn't miss a beat, which you're always worried about when someone, missed. Look at Joe Burrow. He missed a month of preseason, and now Alvin Kamara didn't miss preseason. He was there for preseason, but he hasn't done anything for the last 3 weeks of workout on his own. So you do worry about a guy that's coming in for his first game of the year this late in the season, but he looked fine. He looked like he looked as he did before. Another bright spot, I think, is, man, Chris Olave. Tampa Bay had no answer for Chris Olave. I mean, that's uncommon these days, but Derek Carr just couldn't get him the ball. There were multiple times when he was wide open. He had 3 steps on a defender, and Carr just couldn't get him the ball. I mean, so.
Yeah. We asked this question, should Derek Carr have started this game with his injured shoulder? He practiced Friday and Saturday. Kind of a surprise to see him return to practice. Not kind of. It was a surprise to see him return to practice. But then they after Friday said, hey, he feels okay. He went through their real light walkthrough yesterday, felt okay. They started him. Your opinion the whole week was, why risk it? In fact, when I told you he was practicing Friday, you said they're crazy if they start him. Do you think, regardless of a risk of re-injury, because apparently that wasn't an issue, do you think this game turns out differently if the Saints start Jameis Winston or Taysom Hill?
I'm going to say the same thing that I said last year when asked if Jameis Winston took over for Andy Dalton in the middle of the season, would it make a difference? We'll never know. I mean, my opinion is, yes, it would have made a difference because they started off slow on offense. They could never get in any kind of rhythm. And I think Jameis would have given them a better chance, whether he would have or would not have. He would have given them a better chance to get in a rhythm early on. So, and then you don't make the switch after you see that clearly that Derek Carr is ineffective and he can't do anything but throw more than a 5 to 10 yard pass. The stats show that that's the case. So, I mean, we'll never know. And to be stubborn, and I just talked about it, how Dennis Allen's got to do some different things because this is his last chance. So for him not to make that switch is really kind of baffling, I guess. I did ask I did ask, and I told you that it needed to be asked. No one else was going to ask. I waited to the end. I asked if there was any thought during the game to put Jameis in, and he paused for a second before he said no, not until the end. But he didn't say it right away. So whenever a coach doesn't answer the question right away and says pauses and then says no, tells me that he wants to say yes, but he knows it's not the right thing to say. So he, it is what it is. But whatever. I mean, it didn't work. I don't think Derek Carr was terrible, but he was ineffective. And I would think he would even tell you that. I would hope that he would tell you that. But no one's going to ask him whether he thinks he should play or not, because of course he's going to tell you he thought he should have been in there.
I mean, Derek Carr, usually very accountable. I think he'll tell you he didn't play well. I do not think, and we'll ask the guys when they come out from the locker room, I do not think he will blame it 1% on the injury.
Oh, I don't think he'll blame it on the injury at all. I mean, he's going to I agree with you. That's who Derek Carr is. He's going to come out and take full blame for it. But he's not, at the same time, like you said, he's not going to blame it on the injury, although the injury probably is a huge part of the problem. And second, he's definitely not going to say, oh, I probably should have come out of the game, because if he should have come out of the game.
No, there's no way.
Exactly. So we're not getting the whole answer, which you never do in the NFL. I understand that. You have to read through the lines with everything. And I think you can read through the lines and realize the Saints wish they would have done things differently, maybe even just a little bit. We'll never know to the answer to your original question.
And let's be honest, they lost this game by 17 points. Right. They did not play well. Now, it could have gone different at several points. We talked about Adam Prentice's fumble. There was a couple of third down passes where the Saints just missed. One of them was to Adam Prentice. One of them later, I think when it was 17-6, they missed a pass to Alvin Kamara that could have gotten them a first down in the red zone. They had a deep shot down here to Chris Olave that was actually one of the better balls Carr threw all day, and the defense broke it up. There were some moments, as there are in most games, but as it turned out, I'm just looking at the yardage here. Tampa Bay 353 yards, Saints 197, couldn't even break 200 yards. Yards per play, Tampa Bay 5.3, Saints 3.2. Generally speaking, in analytics circles, that 2 yards per play margin is blowout territory. And 2.1, I mean, they got blown out.
You think the Prentice play might have been the turning point. I think the turning point, we kind of talked about it a little bit, it's 14-6, and you can't get close enough to go for a fourth down. I mean, we were talking about where do you go for a fourth down right there. If it's 4th and 3 or closer, you go for it. If it's 4th and 3 or longer, you don't. It was 3rd and 8, and I think they got 3 or 4 yards. So they did the right thing at the time, was to kick the field goal, in my opinion. But you have to be more cognizant of where you need to get. You need to at least try to get close enough to go for it, and they couldn't do that. To me, that was the turning point in the game, because Tampa Bay went right back down and kicked the field goal and made it 17-9. And although it was still a one-score game at that time, to me, it kind of felt like, okay, lights are almost out here.
Yeah, because, I mean, we talk about, everyone says, oh, get within one possession. 8 points for this offense. I mean, do you have any faith they're going to get a 2-point conversion? You don't know that's really one possession.
No, exactly. And to be able to do that with 8 or 9 minutes left in the ball game instead of having to do that. And again, they never had a chance to even have to do that because they let Tampa Bay score every time they got the ball back in the fourth quarter. It looks like a tired defense, didn't it?
That's the other thing. I mean, the defense, the dome is rocking. They recognize the backs are against the wall. This is the only chance, or this is the last chance. And it's 3rd and 7. I mean, that was the Bucs' magic number was 3rd and 7. They converted 6 3rd and 7s in this game. And the biggest one was this crossing route to Chris Godwin, got down inside the 10, and that ended the game. I mean, if you stop them there, it's probably too long for them to try a field goal. It's 17-9, and the Bucs probably punt it away. You don't have a good chance at that point. You might have to go 90-plus yards, but you at least have a chance if you can finally put together a drive and get the 2-point conversion. You can tie this game, and boy, would the dome have been rocking then. But the defense all day long, just outside of the first quarter, really could not come up with stops.
Look, I'll probably be a little bit more blunt about this tomorrow morning on Datitude than I'm being right now. But I'm going to say that usually at this point, by the quarter pole, which is basically where the Saints are, you're basically at the quarter pole. And for every good team, every team that has a chance to do anything that matters, you usually have a feeling this team has a chance to do something that matters. I don't think anyone in their right mind right now thinks this team has it, whether it be because of leadership, whether it be because maybe this defense isn't as good as we thought. You're losing to teams you shouldn't lose to. maybe it's because the offensive line is hit or miss, although they were better today. Maybe it's because, your $40 million a year quarterback is injured and you don't know how long. I mean, those shoulder injuries, let's get real. I mean, he was okay to play, but those are the kind of injuries that could linger. And it could bother him again next week and the week after and the week after and the week after. And I'm not saying you should make a change. If you feel like Derek Carr's your best chance to win, you're the coach. Make that decision, but you better be right. And again, you got a $40 million quarterback and you're taking a chance that, he's got inflammation. You're just going to keep shooting him up with cortisone. I don't know. I don't get any feel whatsoever this team is going to do anything special. So we talk about whether it's going to be them in Atlanta or them in Tampa or Tampa in Atlanta. At this point, I don't know that it matters unless they can get a lot better in the next few weeks.
It just feels like a team that they won the first 2 weeks, but you almost need to walk a tightrope and have everything go right late to win those games. And then if things don't go well, you get this, and it's 26-9, and we're all trying to figure out what happened. So Tampa Bay Buccaneers 26, New Orleans Saints 9. You're watching the Saints Insider Postgame Show here from the Caesars Superdome in downtown New Orleans. Zach Ewing and Jim Derry. We're going to take a quick break, hear a word from Tulane Doctors. We are still awaiting the guys from the locker room. Luke Johnson, Jeff Duncan, Rod Walker will be here to dissect this a little further. Stick with us while we take another break.
We are Tulane Doctors. Physicians and scientists working side by side to advance academic medicine. We give our community access to the best possible medical remedies, developing state-of-the-art treatments to improve quality of life, address public health crises, and cure disease. All in passionate pursuit of our mission to provide inspired patient care for generations to come. Tulane Doctors. The future of medicine is here.
The Times-Picayune always gets it right. Jay's on top.
Not quite. It says here the Crusaders are the best.
I think you mean the Greenies, buddy.
These sports writers know what's up.
At least you're wearing the right colors, but we know why people read the paper. The one thing we can all agree on, we trust the Times-Picayune.
Subscribe today. Read it today. Trust it today. The Times-Picayune.
You're never gonna make the front page wearing that.
Welcome back to the Saints Insider Postgame Show, live from the Caesars Superdome. Zach Ewing with Jim Derry, waiting on the guys from the locker room. Look, sometimes after a loss, players take a little bit more time to talk. And so we will stay with you here until we get those guys from the locker room and hear what the players said. Obviously, plenty to talk about after the Saints lose 26-9 to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I'd like to know, is there anybody in the comments, and Zoe, our producer, can let me know if anybody chimes in, did anyone actually predict not only that the Saints would lose this game, but that they wouldn't even be in it? Because I will say this, Jim, I've been to quite a few games here now. I know not as many as you. With 2 minutes left, a 2-minute warning, they're taking a break. This Superdome was as sad of a place as I think I've ever seen it. Even in like the post-COVID years when Ian Book was starting against the Dolphins and stuff, and everyone was just kind of falling asleep. It wasn't this down. There's just empty seats everywhere.
January 3rd, 1988, Saints versus the Vikings, first ever Saints playoff game. Saints scored on their opening drive, took a touchdown, never heard the dome, as loud as, and I'm talking about even the block punt. Like, it was louder, I think, than the block punt, because this place was nothing but a big block of cement back then. By the end of that game, with 2 minutes left, the Saints were losing 44-10. It was worse than it. I mean, I was standing somewhere along one of these concourses, and it was me and maybe about 8 people were still here that day. I was a kid, but I was a 20-year-old kid. But yeah, it was pretty bad.
But at least in that case, you're like, all right, we made the playoffs. The Saints didn't do that very often back then. You can have at least a little bit of pride in that. Like, this Bucs team, this Bucs, like, if you're talking about NFL survivor pools and stuff, and you look before the season, when do I want to take the Saints? This might have been the one you circled at home against a bad Bucs team Now, given the uncertainty with Carr and everything, I don't think you actually press the button on the Saints for Survivor this week. But going into the season, it certainly was one you might have. And people just not only was it a loss and a bad loss, it was bad football. It was boring football. I mean, it's the no call, all that sort of stuff. Like, people get angry after this. They're just sort of like slump their shoulders and walk out of here.
Well, let me ask you a question, Zach. How would you feel if you were a Saints fan, or just how would you feel in general about this team had they not blown the lead last week and they'd actually be 3-1? Would it bother you as bad if they threw up a stinker like they? Because the predictions wouldn't have been any different had they won last week. I don't think they would have been any different. In fact, if anything, I'd have felt more strongly that they were going to win this game. So how would you feel had they if they were 3-0 coming in and then lost just like they lost today?
I think what changes in that situation, the narrative becomes, boy, this team got too big for its britches. They started 3-0. They thought they could just walk through the schedule. This isn't a team that can do that. But hey, we're still 3-1. They look past this one. Go get them next week. I think that's the narrative versus now it's like, well, what's wrong? And it might not be fair to do that, because if Blake Grupe can make a field goal last week, or Demario Davis makes a tackle on the goal line, all these really one plays, they're 3-1. But does it really make a difference other than that they banked one more win?
No. I mean, I'll be honest, and that's why I asked you first before I would say this. I wouldn't feel any different about this team had they found a way to win, because I never got a feeling through any of these two victories, and then last week they gave up a victory. They literally gave one up. But I never felt good about this team so far. That's what I'm saying. You're at the quarter pole. There's nothing about this team. And before the game or after the game, there's nothing about this team that makes me feel something special is going to happen. Now, they still have plenty of time to change their mind. We've seen teams throughout history or whenever that just something clicks and the light comes on. And we saw LSU in their national championship year. They weren't playing like the LSU we saw at the end of the year when they won the national championship. They almost lost to Texas A&M. So this is a team that has time to turn on the light, but I just don't feel, and again, regardless of what happened last week or this week, I just don't get that feeling like it's going to change. I hope I'm wrong, because it's a lot more fun to cover a winning team than it is to cover a losing team.
Listen, it's the NFL. Things change every single week dramatically. That's why we love it. That's why it's so difficult to bet on, to do survivor pools, to do all. I mean, it changes every single week, and this Saints team could turn it around. Having said that, there is a myriad of issues that they're going to have to solve. One we have not talked about very much is the depth in the secondary, which is becoming a real concern. They lost Lonnie Johnson today to injury. Marcus May has one game left to serve on his suspension, but when Lonnie Johnson went out, I think did Ugo Amadi go in and play safety? And I mean, at that point, he's like a slot corner playing safety. He's like your fourth string safety. You have Marshawn Lattimore, who's solid. Alontae Taylor's been very good, although he's given up a couple of big plays here and there. He's been inconsistent. But without Paulson Adebo, who's got a hamstring, we don't know the severity of that. Maybe he's back next week. Maybe he isn't. Marcus May will be back in 2 weeks. So there is a little bit of light at the end of that tunnel. But I think that kind of reared its head today.
Well, the good news is I don't think you have to really worry about that all that much until you come back on that Thursday night for Jacksonville, because I don't think either team the next 2 weeks. I mean, next week you're talking about a team who's their scariest threat, Juju Smith-Schuster. I don't know.
And Mac Jones throwing the ball. I mean,
exactly.
Well, although we said that about Baker Mayfield. So
yeah, but that's a little bit different, because I don't think Mac Jones moves around as well as Baker Mayfield. And then you're talking about the next week. I mean, to me, there's only one really good receiver for that Houston team. That's Nico Collins, who had like 180 yards today. So, look, again, that could be a problem, but to me, there are other pressing issues. The one good thing that the Saints have in their favor, like we said today, it was an obvious bet on Tampa situation, and none of us wanted to see it. I think there's a lot of people. The Saints will be probably, I looked today, before the game, they were 1.5-point dogs at New England. It'll probably be more like 2 or 2.5 when the lines come out tomorrow morning. So they're going to be, I think all the sharps going to be on New England. I think a lot of even the home media are going to be down, because what happens when a team stinks, everybody tends to be down on them. And so maybe next week actually is a good spot. We'll kind of see. We'll go into detail in the matchups. They're going to have to win a dogfight. It's going to have to be a low-scoring game. It's going to have to be another boring game. But so you have 7 days to think about it. But look, they've got to do something. They got to do something now. But it's going to be interesting next week. Again, that'll be a really close line, and most people are going to be taking New England next week.
I mean, I think the look ahead line was New England minus 1.5, and so maybe 2. And so
minus 1.5 this morning.
We might see some 3s out there. It kind of depends on how New England plays in Dallas. Apparently, Mac Jones just fumbled into a scoop and score. The Cowboys hit a trick play for a 2-point conversion.
I got -6.
So I mean, I think it may depend on how New England plays. But that defense is for real. I mean, look, they were one of the only teams that really held Miami down. They lost the game, but they did hold Tua Tagovailoa and Miami down a little bit on that road.
Well, Buffalo did today.
Yeah, Buffalo did today as well. Different sort of game. But you go up to Foxborough, and it's not going to be easy to move the ball. You're going to have to figure something out. I just don't know what that answer is. I mean, the Saints, the frustrating thing, I think, is they look competent for stretches at a time, and you go, hey, they found something here. This could work. And then there's a big penalty or a sack or a drop pass or something, and everything goes awry.
There's no question about it. Look, you're going to learn a lot about who this team is, to me, in the next 2 weeks, going on the road. And look, we've said it before, the Saints actually been playing better as of the last year and a half, 2 years or so. They've been playing better on the road. So maybe it's a good thing they're going to New England and getting out of here. I don't know. But they'll be focused. If they're not focused next week, then I'm going to feel even worse about this team than I do right now, because you can't follow a clunker like today with another clunker. We'll find out.
100%. The last time the Saints played in New England, Jameis Winston started, and the Saints won the game. So who knows? Maybe some foreshadowing. He's Jim Derry. You can check him out on the Datitude podcast on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. You can also check him out on the Bayou Bets show on Mondays and Thursdays. But Jim, thanks for being with us. We're going to let you go. The guys are here from the locker room, so we will move on here on the Saints Insider Postgame Show.
Sounds good, Zach. Thank you.
All right. First on, we'll let Jim get out of here, and we will bring on Luke Johnson. He is fresh from the locker room here at the Superdome. Saints Insider Postgame Show is brought to you by Tulane Doctors. And Luke, what do the Saints have to say in the locker room?
I think everybody's frustrated. It just I don't know even really what the right word is for it. Disgusted with the performance. Look, yeah, I think they came in here thinking they were gonna, and they had an opportunity. Atlanta lost the first game of the day. Yeah, they could go and take sole possession of first place in the NFC South. They came out here and stunk it up. Dennis Allen, I think, summed it up perfectly with his opening remarks. He said, we got our bleep kicked. I don't know if I could actually say it on this show.
Jim said it, so.
Okay, yeah. He said we got our ass kicked. And Tyrann Mathieu followed up and said the exact same thing. Offensively, they were completely non-competitive. Defensively, they played incredibly poorly in situational football. I think Tampa went 3 for 4 in the red zone, and they started 8 of 13 on third down. And the last 2 they didn't convert they didn't really need it at the end of the game. So it was a complete butt kicking by the Buccaneers, something none of us really saw coming. Judging by the look and sound of it in that locker room, I don't think the Saints saw it coming either.
Yeah, and it's weird for a team that they were 2-1, but they were coming off a devastating loss, and their wins they had to work hard for. I mean, surely the Saints weren't complacent about this and thinking they were going to come in here and walk over the Bucs.
No, I don't think so. I think really it's a frustration that they have, what we've seen to be this what looks to be an impressive collection of offensive talent, and they've gotten nothing out of it. I mean, nothing. This is 10 straight games where they've been held to 21 or fewer points. That is a losing recipe in the NFL. Okay, I mean, it's just, especially when you're spending $150 million on a quarterback in the offseason. He's out here. He said he wasn't really affected by the shoulder, but it's hard to believe that when he's averaging 3.5 yards per attempt. It's a second worst mark in his career. Everything that they were throwing today was 10 yards or less, and the one shot where you thought they had a really realistic opportunity at a big play. He's got Chris Olave streaking wide open down the right sideline, and he underthrows him by 5-10 yards. And Olave can't make the play. So the whole thing is frustrating, especially on the offensive side. And look, defenses are going to have games like this in the modern NFL. You're going to have games where you miss tackles and the other team is pulling a rabbit out of its hat on third down every play. You can combat that by playing good offense. And the Saints haven't played good offense for 3 years now.
Derek Carr said the shoulder didn't affect him. What did affect him? I mean, what did he blame the performance on?
He did not blame there was no with excuses after the game. He was given ample opportunity to make excuses and to say his shoulder was bugging him and everything like that. Everybody's saying it's on the execution. Dennis Allen's asked what it is. He's saying it's execution. And at the same time, he's saying, look, as coaches, we got to be better. And they have to be. But, this is the same thing that we've been hearing from them for, 2 seasons now. Everything is, we have to get better. We will get better. And it's just you're kind of running out of time to be better.
That's right. And up next is another 2-game road trip. New England next week, Houston the week after that. Houston got a big win today. That doesn't look like an easy game.
Yeah.
New England's never an easy place to play. So the Saints better circle the wagons here pretty quick.
Yeah, they have to. They got to get it turned around now, right? Because this is a team that has real aspirations, and if they can't get this offense even remotely competitive, you're wasting a prime defense, which even a defense that played bad today, still 26 points is not. It's not going to win a team a game every time, right? So I just think that if they don't get this turned around in a hurry, some of these answers they have, which are already starting to feel kind of hollow, it's going to be not believable. They have to find something, or they have to make major changes on this team.
This is not the type of team, type of organization, type of head coach who's going to make a snap judgment and make a change. So I don't think we're going to see anything drastic. But are there any sort of minor shifts we could see going into next week, either personnel or play calling or anything?
Well, I don't think we're going to see a change at who's calling the plays, you have a hard time seeing a change personnel wise. It's not they're going to bench Derek Carr anytime soon. I don't think you can put this blame on the receivers, who I think have been the only consistently good part about this offense. Their offensive line, they're committed to these guys for 3 years.
And they didn't play terrible today.
I think they played okay, but it's you're definitely not going to make the change at coordinator, right? 3-4 games into the season, and then personnel wise, is that you can't see where they're going to mix things up. So it has to be just a complete mindset shift from this organization, where they're looking at a completely different way of doing things, because everything that they're trying right now is not working. And look, again, this whole thing to me falls back on the offense. 10 straight games at 21 or fewer points. That should be unacceptable at the NFL level. It doesn't matter how many injuries you have. That needs to change. It needs to change now. Otherwise, this team is heading for another disappointing season where they don't matter at the end of the year.
A defense under pressure will eventually crack, and that's what we saw today. So Luke Johnson is the beat writer for the Times-Picayune and NOLA.com. You can read his work on NOLA.com/Saints. Luke, thanks for joining us, and get to work, man.
Yep.
All right, he's Luke Johnson. This is the Saints Insider Postgame Show. We'll be joined next by Rod Walker, Times-Picayune columnist. Here comes Rod. And again, I don't want to sound like a broken record, but the Saints lose 26-9. Pretty much a disaster all the way around, Rod.
Yeah, I don't have anything good to tell Saints fans. I don't know any positives you can really take from this game. You may can say the offensive line played a little bit better. And actually, I asked Dennis Allen that. And he said he thought they were a little improved. But other than that, I didn't see a whole lot that you should be happy about at all.
In your opinion, we saw a lot of quick passes from Derek Carr, a lot of short passes. Was that in deference to the fact that he's playing with an injured shoulder, the fact that you have an offensive line that has struggled to protect him, or was that just conservative play call?
Carr was asked that in the press conference, and he didn't want to really. He kind of put it on the coaches. It's kind of like the game plan. But so I guess the question is, why was that the game plan? And I think his shoulder was bothering him a little bit more than he probably let on. This is a guy that hadn't missed a lot of games since he's been in the NFL, with 3 or 4 games due to injury. And I think he really wanted to play, but there were some throws he made today that you had to think that this guy's hurt a little bit. He had Chris Olave, he missed him, couldn't get it to him. Then he had Shaheed, couldn't quite get that to him. Then the next play, he throws one 60 yards into the end zone. So I think he was definitely bothered by the shoulder. I think that long throw was one he was trying to prove that he wasn't bothered by, but I just think there were some things that really limited this offense today.
In your opinion, obviously Derek Carr wanted to play. He came back to practice on Friday. He practiced again yesterday. He was showing that he could play. He also told us, I don't want to play unless I know that I'm going to be helping the team. In your opinion, should Jameis Winston have gotten the start today?
I thought Jameis should have started. I kind of wrote about that on Friday. I thought that that's why you have a backup like Jameis, because you feel like he can do that. I think the extra week of rest would have done Carr some good. And I thought it was risky putting Carr behind this offensive line that has given up 12 sacks coming into the day, gave up 3 more today. So I just thought Jameis would have been a good move for today, and they decided to go with Carr. And I don't know if Jameis would have won this game or not, but I think they should have taken their chance today.
Hard to say it would have made a difference in a game like this, but also interesting that Carr apparently was stiffening up at the end of the game. They had to take him out for Jameis. Game was out of hand at that point. Jameis forces the ball, throws an interception. Going forward, New England next week, Houston the week after that. Houston had a big win today over Pittsburgh. They've won 2 in a row. They look like they're not going to be a walk in the park. Time to turn it around, as Luke just said. Time to turn it around is now.
It is. I think Houston's one of those games, and I'm looking 2 weeks ahead, but that was one of the games when the schedule came out. He's like, okay, that's a win, but now that is not a win. The way the team played today, I don't know if there are any games that you say, okay, they're definitely going to win that game. So all the players know that the time is now. They're not quite pushing the panic button yet, but it's it's getting close to that time, because you're starting to think that, okay, every week we've been saying, okay, this offense is going to get going. They got Kamara today, they're going to get going, but eventually you start thinking, okay, this is who this offense is. And I think that's where we are right now.
You may have already given this, but you've got the post-game column today. It'll be up on NOLA.com/Saints later. What is the topic in one sentence of your post-game column?
The offense sucks, I guess, would be the best way to say it. I don't know if we can say that word on here, but yeah.
We've already said worse today, so you're fine.
Yeah, I just think the offense and just how bad they are. And, every week we hear Pete Carmichael saying, hey, I got to be better, but we haven't seen it yet, and it's time to see it.
The offense sucks. They say they need to be better. It's time to be better. You heard it. He'll expand on that in the Times-Picayune tomorrow morning and on NOLA.com/Saints here in the next couple of hours. Thanks, Rod. All right. Last but not least, we got Jeff Duncan coming into the Saints Insider Postgame Show here. And Jeff Duncan's a man who's been known to take a stand a time or two and seen some good football and seen some bad football in New Orleans. This is a low point.
Yeah, I think at this point, 4 games into the season, we have enough of a body of work to, conduct a referendum right now on this team and this offense. And it's not good right now. I know the team is 2-2. So you want to look at the bright side of things and say, look, they're still, 500. They're not 0-4 or anything. But the trend is not going the right direction. The 2 losses in a row. And I think more than anything, Zach, losing at home today after the way they lost in Green Bay. I mean, I expected the Saints to come out and really put their best foot forward, to have a really emotional, energetic effort today. And I just didn't see it in really any form. Offensively, we know the struggles. They're almost historic at this point, what's going on. And I don't see a lot of solutions. That's the real concern that I have is I think they kind of are what they are at this point. And it's going to be on this coaching staff, and I'm sure they're going to have some late nights this week to try and come up with some answers that can at least try to compete in some of these games with this defense, because it's a good defense, but they've got to get better on offense. And I think fans are reaching the point, and rightfully so, where they're tired of hearing excuses. And we're getting a lot of them right now and not a lot of answers.
Yeah, it's well said. I mean, I think the way this team has played, even when they've won games, you certainly cannot expect to beat anybody just by showing up. And in some ways, it felt like that a little bit today, especially it was 3-0 at the end of the first quarter. Tampa Bay's not moving the ball real well. It was almost like, hey, we showed up and they're not going to challenge us today. And then they did, and the Saints had no answer.
Yeah, that's exactly how I felt it went. I mean, it felt like the Bucs had more substance than the Saints. It felt like there was a little flash there, and they didn't back it up. And I'm starting to see a little bit of a lack of confidence in what's going on, and that's always a concern. And the players have to stick together. The leadership of this team has to stick together, because right now they're circling the wagons, right? Everyone is out with their pitchforks and torches, trying to call for heads. And knowing this organization, knowing the stability and continuity, how much they value those 2 traits, they're not going to make any knee-jerk reactions. I mean, there's no one going to get fired here in midseason. So they've got to figure it out. And it comes down to not only the coaching staff, but I think also the leaders on this team. I mean, Derek Carr, did not play well today. I know he's injured. We don't know how much of that affected his performance, but he's got to play better. I mean, they're paying him a lot of money. They went out and brought him in to be the franchise quarterback, and he's not playing at the level I think anybody expected right now. So it's not all just play calling. It's not, and to his credit, he said that. But there's a lot of things, and to use that Sean Payton line, which Dennis Allen borrowed today, there's a lot of dirty hands here. It's not just one thing. We always want to try to simplify it to find one problem and one solution, and it's much more complicated.
I asked Rod this question. In your opinion, should Derek Carr have started this game today? Obviously, he wanted to. He practiced Friday. He looked okay. He came back and practiced again yesterday, and the Saints let him make that decision, or at least let him have input in that decision. Should they have stepped up and said, no, this is you need a week?
Well, I think it's a very fair question, and I think the only one that knows really the answer to that is Derek Carr, how much limited he was. He did not look like the same guy to me today, and if that is in fact true, he said to us on Wednesday he would not play unless he was fully healthy and would not hurt the team. He did not look fully healthy to me, and so in that regard, I think you would have been better off resting him a week and going with Jameis Winston. But if he was healthy, then yes, you definitely play Derek Carr because you brought him in to be the leader of this team. You're paying him a lot of money, and you obviously believe he's your best chance at winning when he's healthy. So it really comes down to something only Derek Carr knows. Was he 100%? Didn't look that way to me.
Big picture, though, the Saints are 2-2. They do hit the road for the next 2 weeks. I mean, boy, when you face a situation like this where you really want to show some improvement and really want to show that you can go where you wanted to go in this season, probably the last thing you want to see is Bill Belichick on the opposing side, maybe Pat Mahomes instead, but like that's not going to be easy next week to turn this thing around.
No, I mean, this is one of the more difficult places to play in the league. It's a place historically the Saints have struggled. I know they won their last trip there, but this is a very talented Patriots defense. There's no question it's going to be the best defense they've played this season. And look, the Houston game looked easy when the season started. Doesn't look quite as easy now. They just beat Pittsburgh and beat them handily. So these next 2 weeks, we're going to find out a lot about this team, about their leadership, about their coaching ability, their ability to fix problems. All these things need to be solved because this season has quickly turned in the wrong direction. I mean, just to think, Zach, a week ago we were in Green Bay, and this team was one half away from being 3-0, one of 4 or 5 3-0 teams in the league, and now they're kind of in a tailspin, and I don't see a lot of answers coming right now from inside that locker room. So we're going to see where they go, what direction this team goes in. It's a big test right now for the leadership of this team, both in the locker room and in the coaching staff.
We talked in the preseason about this season being a tipping point for the Saints, and the first 2 weeks felt like they were going to crawl on the right side of that cliff, and now maybe they've slipped back. So we'll see what happens. We'll have plenty to talk about. Jeff will have a column on NOLA.com/Saints tomorrow morning, and we'll have Saints Insider podcast Wednesday and Friday, and then, of course, full coverage from Foxborough next week for the Saints at the Patriots. So for Jeff Duncan, Rod Walker, Luke Johnson, Jim Derry all join me as well, and our producer Zoe Collins-Rath and Norman Bell, our videographer. This has been the Saints Insider Postgame Show. I'm Zach Ewing. Thanks, everybody, for being here, and keep it locked to the Saints on NOLA.com YouTube channel.